My children and I were having a conversation today, July the 11th, and we were talking about this struggle that I believe has been a struggle, trying to get our children to go to bed at a consistent time. Ever since they were born, I believe in habits. I believe in healthy habits of that if you start children out in the way they should go, then it can make their lives a lot easier, especially when you look at the millions of people that have the diagnosis of insomnia and all of those other comorbidities or issues that happen because of not getting adequate sleep. My children are at an age where they should be getting at least about 10 hours of sleep. At least it's recommended. And what I have noticed, and so I don't know if it was more of a mental self-fulfilling prophecy, but what I have noticed is that they do sleep about 10 hours. That even my children going to bed last night at 10:30, I allowed them to watch a movie, and they really didn't wake up until about, especially my daughter, until about 8:30. My son got up a little bit sooner, and that may have something to do with him smelling food. But he got up a little bit sooner. But roughly, on average, they sleep about 10 hours. I have a son who is 12, and I have a daughter right now who is 10, and both of them will be 1 year older before this year is out. And so it was a great conversation in that, my daughter was like, Mom, why don't we go to bed? Why don't we brush our teeth at 8:45? And then we go to bed around 9, because I was saying 9 o'clock. Technically, if I want you guys up at 7, you need to go be in bed at 9, like be in bed at 9. And I get it. I get, the desire of wanting to stay up. Sometimes it seems like things get good. You finally know what you want to do. There's this movie you haven't watched and you want to watch it, even as adults. And we allow ourselves to be pulled into that, and risking quality sleep or quality, eating or whatever it may be, quality relationships, communication, etc. You know, um, and so it was a good conversation. And the thing is it's big for me, and I don't know about you, but it's big for follow up. I think as parents, it's so hard for us to follow through, especially if you've been working all day, or maybe you didn't get a chance to finish what you wanted to finish, and your children are now quiet watching a movie, and you're like, well, if I put you to sleep, that's going to take another 10-20 minutes, and then I'm going to want to go to bed because by that time I'm exhausted. And so you may rush to try to get something done, right? How many times have you done that? Try to get something done, and then I'll put you to sleep. And then, as you know, time continues to move, and you're stuck with, okay, you guys still didn't get to bed on time. What is this whole deal about sleeping, getting quality sleep? Well, I believe the lack of quality sleep, and research shows it, that we put ourselves at risk for diseases, you know. And when we talk about the cycle of pain, I told my children, we've been trying to get up and work out in the morning, and that's as early as 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And what I told them is that I don't want you guys to be in pain, positively. I want you guys to be able to wake up in the morning feeling like you've had some rest. Because it's painful for me, and I know for them, to wake up and you feel like you haven't had that rest when you're still tired and you're, just feeling just weak. To me, that is another pain point on this generational cycle of pain. How many children, my son told me that at his last school, that he would see coffee cups, Starbucks cups that would be, in the trash, like tons of them. And then people would, the kids would joke, drinking coffee and how many cups of coffee they'd had. Whereas we could just encourage our children, stick with follow through, consistency, determination, education, and explaining to them why, it's important for you to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep, why it's important. So you can, during sleep time, our brain, every part of our body has to have a point where it slows down. just like our temperature, in order to keep the bugs away, our body regulates itself at approximately 98.6 degrees, some lower, some maybe a tad higher, but around about your body knows how many degrees it needs to be to ward off bugs or to keep everything working smoothly, right? Because that is the job for our body, is to help us as our vehicle for our divine message, is to help us do the work that we're here to do, is to help us to enjoy life abundantly, mental health, social, spiritual, physical health, to keep us in harmony inside, so that we can feel it on the outside. Because I do believe that our physical symptoms are an expression of, especially diseases, are an expression of the emotional or turmoil or instability that comes from the inside to the out. And so, health and wellness, again, is another avenue for parents to really look at, what does my belief about health and wellness mean? And even before that, my belief about the body's purpose, my belief about my purpose. Who am I here? And what is my relationship between this divine spirit, this spirit that separates things, earth, and the planets, so they don't bump into each other. So we don't fly into the sun. So we don't have all these meteoroids and rocks coming to Earth and destroying Earth. So we even have a planet, let alone the land and the ocean and the water. So what keeps everything in alignment, and this sometimes what it feels like chaos, it's an organized chaos. It is the way that we're here and how we interact with the world that we have. So we have to look at that, our underlying beliefs, and that's what creating a generational love cycle is all about. Looking at our underlying beliefs and say, okay, are these beliefs, this belief, is it hurtful or is it helpful for me and for others? What am I doing? As I often talk about, this collective consciousness that is made of individual consciousness. How are my thoughts contributing to the war, peace, love, hate, fear, rejection, prejudice, obesity, cardiac disease, diabetes, cancer? How are my thoughts causing this to happen more or less? Because I believe that we all have a direct and indirect effect or influence on what we experience today. And mainly through the thoughts that we consistently um, hold on to, continue to create, continue to sow within our inner garden, right? And so, health and wellness is, how can I help my children to be in the best versions of themselves? And it's no matter how much you talk, and Wayne Dyer talked about this, no matter how much you say to your children, they're looking at that thin line between, or looking at that gap between what you say to me and what you do. When you tell me to eat my vegetables, are you eating your vegetables? When you tell me to drink water, do I see your bottle of water sitting next to you? Do I see you even going to the restroom? When you say that we all matter, how do you speak to my neighbor who is African American, or the person at the store who's Chinese or Korean? How do you interact with them? When you say have fun, do I see you sitting at a table or at your work all day and I don't see you at night? When you say that it's important to get quality sleep, do I see you just watching TV all night and hear the TV going? Even when I wake up in the morning, do I still hear the TV going? So it's that gap. How big is that gap is what they're looking at, because you can say things and it goes out one ear and out the other. When we think about our mental health and mental conditions, how they're diagnosed yearly, how do we respond when someone says something unkind? How do we greet people? Um, how do we discuss or talk about events in our lives? Do we say it in such a way that we knock down the other person? I mean, really, crude, and just talk about them or talk about the other race or gender? Or do we address our experiences head on, believing that everything has a divine purpose? Every experience is an organized experience for me to have during my earthly journey, is an opportunity for me to reflect the truth that is within me, that peace, all these other virtues, love, peace, self-control, kindness, all of that resides within me. And it's just a matter of me using those superpowers. We all have those. And I consider, as I speak, I consider virtues a superpower because it helps you to not be intertwined in your experiences. It keeps you standing on firmer ground and seeing the experiences as they are and properly dealing with them. I had a phone call the other day, and it told me on my screen, it said scam likely. And I picked it up. Even before that call, I thought it was like a thought came into my mind about someone calling me and how I would address it head on. I didn't play into their call. I didn't hang up on them, but I said, basically, really look at what you're doing with your life. And when I thought about it, even though I said what I wanted to say, there's always this, could I have said something else? And what I really want to say was your life is so meaningful and so purposeful. Why are you doing this? And you don't have to answer me, but I really want you to take that with you and to question, why are you really doing this? What is there in you that feel like you're inadequate or not right to do the right thing, not playing on people's phones, not trying to get them to buy something that is fake? They told me that I had a packages in Mexico, and it's just like, wow, this is what you really want to do with your time. How do we teach our children about respecting others? Do we respect people on the phone? Do we encourage them to maximize their money? Do they have a savings account or checking account? Are they aged to have that, where we start looking at savings and checkings and being financially responsible? Where we talk about bank, where we talk about needs and wants. Do we have those conversations with our children? Regarding that. And I do, the best times that I usually recommend to have conversations are at meal times, and also to during play times where, you're playing, and if you're, and to be open, because often when you play with your child, they feel that your shield is down, right? They kind of see you as their equal at that time, and they feel like they can really talk to you. And those are the times where they may bring up stuff that you may not be prepared for. Or if you are in that moment, you ask for the right thing to say. Because even though you may not be prepared, I do believe there is infinite intelligence right there to give us what we need to give, to pass on the message through us, using us as divine beings to speak to itself, because we're all from that creative source, right? And so it's like we're passing the message to ourselves, because of this collective consciousness. What else do how can we encourage proper eating? Because that's all with health and wellness. How do we encourage, first of all, going back, depression and anxiety, where your inner sadness to yourself, where you feel like you don't have a voice? And I talked about that last week, where it's important to encourage our children to speak, right? We want to know where all this anxiety come from. While all, anxiety is not trusting in the moment. We're living in the future. And I get that. I've been through that. Teaching them not to be mad at themselves, but for forgiveness and compassion, all of which they have inside of them. Are we encouraging that through our actions as well as our words? Because as we become more spiritually aware, we help our children to do the same. We help our children to do the same. And so those are, when we think about health and wellness, it's just so important that I tell my children every day, it's so important for communication. It's, you have to let them know that your voice matters. Your voice matter to me. Communication, looking at and discussing beliefs. What do you believe? What have you seen? Has anything, what do you have questions for me? So actually asking open-ended questions so that our children can speak to us. And if they're too little or too small and you're like, well, I can't really have those conversations, you'd be amazed what a 4 or 5 year old would say. And even just really, I think spending time with our children as infants and babies and just kind of talking to them and say, hey, you have a right to tell me anything that's bothering you. The brain is so magnificent, you guys. Do not underestimate the power of the brain to remember, to establish those neural pathways, that when it comes time to really talk about something, you're wondering, you're excited that your child is willing to listen to you because you have cultivated that relationship since they were in utero, right? I used to talk to my children a lot because my mother, was about communication. And I think it's important to encourage our children to self reflect. As we self reflect on our days and our experiences, that's why when they come from school, when they come from events, ask them, how was your time? And when they feel upset, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk through those emotions instead of them holding on to it and them using food or any other external thing to keep their mouth shut, for them not to speak. And that's just an aha moment where a lot of people, when we're dealing with weight issues and that, were they told that you're not to speak? Were they somehow, whether it was verbally or just the way that the parents responded, and therefore when they eat, they're kind of like stuffing themselves because they're just trying to keep their voice down at bay because they feel like they can't speak. They've been told not to speak. They feel like they have no voice and they can't show their anger and their emotions because they're supposed to be this good kid, and they're not supposed to get things routed up, when sometimes we have to undo that to have the peace that we all deserve to have, and that we're spirits speaking to spirits, divine spirits. Um, and maybe we can help get rid of a lot of these foundational things that are at that promote disease. Lack of sleep because of anxiety, frustration, stress, inadequate eating, not making time for exercise, not making time to cultivate relationships. Those are the things that are major pain points that we have in the generational cycle of pain. And we as parents, as caregivers, have an opportunity to create a generational love cycle dismantling that will dismantle the generational cycle of pain, those spokes in the generational cycle of pain. And so how are you cultivating health and wellness? What are you not only telling your children, but what are you showing them, even as adults? Even as, what are you showing? Because I believe that, as if you're a teachable person, which the spirit is, if you're teachable, then it doesn't matter how old you are. And we know that anyone can be our teachers, from young to old, that anyone, everyone is our teacher. Our children, our grandparents, our mothers and fathers and aunts, they're all here to teach us something about who we are and to help us be what we need to be on this earthly journey, help us to fulfill our divine purpose. And so there's nothing by chance, and everything here is for us to remember who we really are. And so health and wellness is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get it to our pain points and to undo the weeds that we've allowed to be sown in our inner garden. An opportunity to grow, an opportunity to experience an abundant life, an opportunity to help remind others of their purpose on earth. And I get excited about that. I really do. And I think it's such a blessing that even though at times it can seem very challenging, motherhood, caregiver, caregivers, being caregivers is a challenging opportunity to help us to fulfill our divine purpose. And as we do that, we help the child that we care for, to do the same. As you know, I've started my newsletter, Empowering You to Be You, where I share just avenues on health, on mental aspects, how we can undo a lot of these damaging or draining beliefs, and really get back to the essence of who you are. All right. I'll talk to you guys soon. The link to my newsletter will be in this podcast. And as always, make this lifetime great, because no matter what, you still can. You're still here. You can make a difference. And it always starts individually before it branches out into the world.